Profile of the great ALW super hierarchies, the great apes. North America sighting. The great apes are among the most intriguing animals on the earth. They are a rare species that exist only in a secluded rainforest area of Africa. A.L. Williams started with a group of great apes, but several years ago they were in danger of becoming extinct. Recently, there have been some sightings in scattered parts of North America that prove that the great apes in A.L. Williams are still alive. There's been a sighting in Southern California, one or two in Georgia, several in Texas. I suspect you understand my point. These great apes are the A.L. Williams super builders who have built the super hierarchies. The next pages are a result of a study of the super builders. They built great base shops. All of the super builders in A.L. Williams did more than recruit and train and a few people and work down line. They all built wide and maintained big base shops producing 100,000 to 200,000 in premium a month. They all ran big opportunity meeting systems and were successful in recruiting and training 100 or more people a month in their base for several years. They built strong personal relationships with all of their key people. They built strong first generation RVPs. Each great ape has produced 20 to 75 first generation RVPs, and most have produced more than 25. These RVPs exploded out in a rapid stream. Out of that group, the RVPs were able to develop 10 to 25 tremendously strong first generation RVPs, NSD type people. Downline from them, second generation to the great apes. All the while, the great apes continued to run a giant base that set the big, stretching example for each wave of new RVPs. As a result, some of the RVPs developed a burning desire to establish their own giant base. For those giant apes who didn't continue to run a big base, some of the magic left for their first generation. Another characteristic of RVPs of the great apes is that these first generation people were independent versus dependent. In other words, they didn't just get that person to RVP by the guidelines, they developed the RVP according to a standard of excellence that enabled the newly promoted person to lead a team by himself. The following are 10 points to develop in an independent RVP leader. Number 1, attitude. Totally positive, loyal to the spirit of the business. Number 2, cash flow of 6 to 9K per month. Number 3, business sense, a student of the business, manages activity and focuses on results, makes money, saves money. Number 4, quality business, strong field underwriting, a strong mutual fund, strong turtle concept. Number 5, strong builder, replaces himself with a team capable of 20 to 30 sales a month. Team leaders should have a recruiter builder mentality. Number 6, office, moves out of upline base shop complex to begin on his or her own, has upline NSD approval. Number 7, secretary, hires a sharp administrative person. Number 8, savings, sets aside $10,000 in cash to assure at least 1 year's rent. Number 9, strong after replacement. Number 10, motivation, communication, is a good leader, good at motivating and communicating downline. They produced giant NSD, SNSD type team. The first generation RVPs of the great apes maintained big base shops for 4 to 5 years solid. These base produced 15 to 30 RVPs frontline to them, seconds of the great apes. And out of that, 15 to 30 came 7 to 10 tremendously strong NSD-type leaders under them. The process was duplicated through at least 6 generations. All the while, the original great apes continued to lead by example with the giant base shop, as did other throughout the hierarchy. My recommendation is that you make a commitment today to run a big base shop for 10 years or more. Make that kind of commitment and everything you want will come from it. They became master motivators. The great apes mastered the art of motivation to large groups of people at all levels. They worked with every RVP as if they were first generation to them. They held big events to give major recognition. They mastered the art of personal letters, newsletters, monthly leaders' bulletins, and conference calls. They made the commitment to go and visit people locally. Constant personal motivation. The great apes communicated almost daily with their key people for 2 years. In my hierarchy, I spoke with my key people every day, whether we were 1,000 miles apart or in the same city. There are 4 types of communication to have with your leaders. Number 1, motivation. Praise them when someone does well. Number 2, encouragement. The most important if your RVP is down. Number 3, good news. Everyone loves it. Number 4, know how. New ideas, new systems, new techniques. Yeah. High octane motivation. The great apes all discovered that communication is the key to maintaining a big base. In my super hierarchy, I worked to build a giant irrigation system using conference calls and letters. It reminds me of General Patton's tank army. It was much more powerful than the traditional foot soldier army, but it presented a whole new set of challenges. The tradition foot soldier could get by on sea rations and bandages, but the tank needed foil and lots of it. They thrived on high octane. It was never easy managing the constant delivery of fuel to a moving army, but in the end, it was worth it. The tank army was so powerful it could devastate the enemy. When you are building a super hierarchy, remember that you need to use high octane motivation to keep it going. A tremendous effort towards communication, training, and motivation is key. They couldn't live with being ordinary or average. All the great apes have the heart of a champion. They were born with an extraordinary amount of desire. The reason they built it big was because they just had to. They couldn't live with themselves if they weren't the best. The magic of expansion. All the great apes were expansion oriented and built multiple base shops. They weren't content with an isolationist mentality. They ventured out and pioneered other areas. They were 3 correct methods of expansion. Leader transplant himself to a new area. This is the purest and best way to expand. It's the way I expanded into Denver. I could have sent someone that I groomed, but I promised that if I had, I wouldn't have been writing this book together or today. Moving to Denver not only had a major influence on me, it stretched me beyond belief. I came from the poor side of a small southern town, but I moved my family to Denver and duplicated the base shop building effort that I had first accomplished in Macon, Georgia. Raise leaders in your base shop and satellite them out. The second best way to expand is to raise a strong leader in your base and then send them or him out to an area of their choosing. One of my first generation RVPs was raised as a leader in Denver, and then he went back to Southern California, where he was from. He raised another person as a leader in Denver, and he returned to his hometown of Austin, Texas. When you expand this way, you ensure that you have an experienced person with vivid impressions of what he must do. Number 3, find a strong leader type person in a certain area and build through him or her. This is the least preferred of the 3 correct methods of expansion. It takes longer and it takes more financial commitment, but it will still work. Every one of the people that expanded from me in this method found me first. I didn't go looking for them. They were a referral or they heard about A.L. Williams and contacted me. In short, I came to meet them in a natural, unforced fashion. They were all good with people. They were honest with good reputations. They had sound financial situations, very important. Below are the 2 criteria for this expansion method. You must be a strong leader who can afford to travel to them. They must be strong enough for you to build on. You must be able to afford to visit them, but you must never start out that way. They should visit you a minimum of the 2 to 3 times before you visit their local territory. For example, one of my RVPs was the first A.L. Williams person in Missouri. He came to Denver twice before I ever set foot in Springfield. Another of my RVPs came to visit me from Wichita, and still another came to Atlanta twice before I ever went to Milwaukee with him. Your final consideration is the expansion method is money. I was at a point in my career that I could handle the demand. I was making over $200,000 a year. I had a base that was running over $100,000 in premium each month. It was at least 50 wide in my base, and I had 10 to 15 strong leaders. When I left to visit the expansion office, these leaders were capable of running the opportunity meetings and the training on their own. I could afford to travel and subsidize them and help them with monthly support money. There is always a sound business basis upon which successful expansion occurs. What is unsuccessful expansion? Typically, I see people get a name in a far away place that they are all excited about. They use last month's rent on an airline ticket. They can't afford to go rushing up there and work with this person. They're jumping on quicksand. Then there's the sling it against the wall expansion mentality, the send them a kit through the mail mentality, and others. In all of these cases, the RVP is just hoping against hope they'll find a good person. Usually futile hope. Think and plan before you expand. I'm going to say it again. Think and plan before you expand. They all set goals for themselves and their people. Each of the great apes recognized the importance of setting goals, both short-term and long-term range. They also saw the value of setting goals for members of their team. I see a lot of people capable of setting goals for themselves, but they miss out on a whole other dimension of management by failing to set goals for their people. In my hierarchy, I send out possibility projections. These are projections of how many recruits or sales or how much production each person in my base will do in 1 month's time. It helps stretch the vision of your team. I get people coming into my office all the time saying, Hubert, how am I supposed to make this projection? Then I sit down with them and go over a step-by-step plan that will produce the projected amount. A similar method of goal setting is promotion timetable. There are printed projections of the month that a person in your downline hierarchy will achieve a certain promotion. For example, I have posted a list of promotions to senior NSD timetable that includes every one of my NSDs. I have a promotion to NSD timetable that includes all my RVPs. Even if the person doesn't make it, it gives them something specific to shoot for. They have a mental picture of themselves being or becoming that new person. They may have used different names, but each of the great apes had some type of standard of excellence that produced above average leaders. Art Williams on building. I'd like to leave you in this chapter with the final thought that has always been true about the great apes. Leaders that build a big base shop and keep producing first generation RVPs, then to those leaders go the greatest honors and greatest rewards. Building principle. Before you can become a great leader, you have to become a great person. People don't accept your leadership just because of your position. Regardless of how good you are, your people see you first as a person.